Have you ever wondered where your engineering career is going, or you're not exactly sure how to get there? Well, in this video, we're going to be talking about the 4 main career paths that most engineers take throughout their career, and how you make those transitions to get where you want to go. And welcome back to Engineering Aerospace with me, Eric Kane. And in this video, we're talking about engineering careers and what are the 4 main roles that most engineers take throughout their career. Now, you may not actually fit into all of these throughout your career. In fact, most probably won't. But if you understand where your potential could be and where you want to go, then you can identify the steps you need to take to progress your career to get to do something that is satisfying for you and puts you in a position where you feel very excited to come to work and make a difference in the world. So I like to think about engineering roles. There's kind of 4 quadrants here. You can kind of think of these as 2-axis systems. Now, as you're entering your career, entering the industry as a young engineer, you have a degree usually, but you're not necessarily very experienced. And so most folks are going to start their career as an individual, well, I can spell, contributor, right? And so that is basically where you are not responsible for managing any people, any programs, anything like that. You just come in as an engineer and you do your daily duties to fulfill that role. Now, that could be something that you stick with for your entire career. I've known plenty of engineers that never wanted to take ownership or leadership roles, and they just wanted to be really good at what they did. And some people really like the comfort and the stability of doing one job and doing it really well. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, I suspect if you're watching this channel that you're probably interested in growing your career and advancing up to do more managerial type tasks, do more leadership type tasks, or doing much more advanced technical work. And so what we're going to talk about now is what are the other positions you could go to? Well, one thing you could do is you could just get really good at the technical details of your role, right? If you're a structural engineer, you can become a structures expert, become the lead on understanding everything that goes into doing design and stress analysis and that sort of thing. Or if you're an electronics engineer, perhaps you become the expert that understands all the details on designing electronics components. And this is what we would call a subject matter expert, or SME. Sometimes these people get into positions, some companies might call them fellows, where they are senior technical advisors to the whole company. And so they become the detailed experts that know everything there is to know about a particular subject area. And what you'll notice about this is basically the advancement in technical skill. So one thing I like to think about this is kind of your technical skill axis, right? So as you become smarter, as you learn to do the more intricate details and understand all the nuance in a particular discipline, you're growing those technical skills. Now, the next thing I'd like to look at is what we would call a it could be a chief engineer or a project engineer. This person is going to basically be leading a program, right? So they would be the senior engineer designing a particular system. So it might be an entire spacecraft, it might be a launch vehicle, an airplane, it might be a major, engine, some sort of large component, something like that. So your chief engineer has to know more than one discipline, right? They are, in an aerospace vehicle, we have a lot of different subsystems, and you have to be a technical expert in all of them. Now, you're not going to know as much as the subject matter experts, but you need to know enough that you can communicate with all the different teams and understand all the issues they're contending with. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be the expert in all these, but you need to understand enough about them. And so you have a fairly strong technical background, but what you're going to have also are some of these soft skills, right? So these will be things like communication and leadership skills. Now, that's always going to be useful no matter what position you're in, but in order to be a chief engineer, you're having to manage not just the technical aspect, but managing the team that is operating underneath you. And so to do that, you're going to have to grow those soft skills so that you can be an effective leader for the team. On top of the fact that you now have to not just understand one subsystem, but understand basically all of them to some degree. Now, the fourth role that you could take is really kind of the role that most engineers starting off probably want to avoid, and that is management, right? So I've known actually a lot of engineers that have gone into management. They start understanding how the customers work, how the projects are managed, the finances, the legal, all that kind of thing, and they find it interesting to lead teams. So they are going much more into this soft skill area and less into the technical, right? So they're kind of moving up in this direction in terms of their skills and focusing really on the soft skills, the communication, and interacting with others. Now, there's other things you would have to learn, right? Like, yeah, you're skipping out on some of the technical skills, but you are going to have to be able to manage the programs, cost, schedule, budget, various risk, those kinds of things. And so there are other skills that you have to learn, but you're not necessarily going into the technical details. Now, there's other folks that I've known that have kind of gone into business development as well. It's a very similar manner. This is for folks that generally really enjoy communicating with others. They like being in that social environment, interacting and understanding the needs of customers and going out and talking to folks. And so there's not very many, but I certainly have known engineers that have gone into that route as well. Now, for the most part, most engineers are going to probably try to focus in on one of these things, right? So you're going to start off as an individual contributor, and maybe you want to become a technical expert, right? You really want to know the subject matter that really excites you and become an expert in it. Now, if you want to do that, I would strongly suggest that you focus in on becoming a technical expert and understanding what's going on in the industry around this subject that you're interested in, writing papers, developing technologies, and trying to push the limit on what is available today. And find opportunities within your company that you work with to develop those skills that are focused in on that one job, right? And so as time goes on, you can become the person that people ask to answer questions, to help resolve hard problems. And that's very focused on one specific discipline. Now, if you want to become a chief engineer, there's probably some level of subject matter expertise that you want to have, but you don't necessarily have to go as far, right? So you'll start to become a technical expert in one area, but you really need to be focusing in on what do the other systems need? How do they operate? What are their limitations? How do the different systems interact with each other? What are the system level risks and things? And so you're going to start to move a little bit from the technical side and start also learning, how do I lead a team? How do I help with conflict resolution between these teams? You have to understand a little bit about how the management over here does their job as well, because you're going to be primarily interacting between the managers and the senior engineers to make decisions, because it's not purely a technical decision that gets made most of the time. Now, any one of these could end up going into management. I've certainly known a lot of engineers that became chief engineers, and I've seen a few folks that have actually kind of gone this entire route and circulated all the way around throughout their career. So there's nothing to say you have to pick one or the other, but you got to understand that each one of these is going to require kind of a different skill set to be good at it. And in order to make this full transition, you really have to be focused on, understanding all of what goes into creating an aerospace program, the technical side and the managerial side, the programmatics, the interpersonal communications, etc. So, if you're just starting out, your primary focus should really be on doing a good job, right? Understanding your current role really well, because that's going to help you get recognized as an expert in that area. And then you're going to get more freedom, more opportunities to go decide, do I want to become a technical expert in this field throughout my career? Or perhaps do I want to learn how all the other subsystems work and start to become somebody who's responsible for more engineering teams and leading a group? Or do I just want to lead folks, work with the project side of things, and have some kind of ownership on that front without having to get quite as technical? And so depending on which of those you choose, you can kind of pick and choose where you want to start focusing your energies. So, if you're a chief engineer, if your objective is to get up to there, you'll probably want to take on opportunities as they arise to lead projects or lead small teams of engineers so that you can gain that experience of interacting with other folks, managing teams. I early on was really kind of nervous about the idea of managing other engineers. But once I did, I took that leap, it was a much better position for me. So I was much happier with working with the folks underneath me, as well as the folks that I had to interact with across the team. Whereas if I was just stayed an individual contributor, I felt like I wasn't having any say in the decision making. So it really kind of depends on your personality. Some people, like I said, are just happy to sit in their cube and just get their work done, go home for the day. But that wasn't me, right? Like, I was really interested in making a difference, making decisions. And so I kind of went down this path. I started very technical in the structural side of things, and I could have gone towards this subject matter expertise, but I really got interested in all the different subsystems as well as kind of managing teams. And so that's the path I took. Like I said, I've known many engineers that have gone into program management and done very well. So it really just kind of depends on what your interests are and where you want to be. So I hope that was a helpful overview for you in your career path. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out here on YouTube or in LinkedIn. And, if you're interested in trying to understand a little bit more about where you want to take your career. Until next time, we'll see you then.